Okay, Manav, you about ready? We got to talk about some deep stuff?
Ready to go. Rock and roll.
Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Manav Gupta is back. I mean, he's been on here several times, but this is like part 2 of the previous AI discussion that we had. Manav is the vice president and CTO of IBM Canada. Royal pain in the neck. No, he and I argue or debate all the time. This is why I have him on. He's a good friend. We have a good time. Let's go back to the big picture. I got a couple questions on that. Let's do the road to AGI. Let's talk about how AI actually will evolve or eventually will evolve. Maybe get into this is a lot, but risk, regulations, society, jobs, companies, economy, advice for the next generation. Those are just a quick little jot down that I did on my note paper. Does that make sense? Those all interest you?
Sounds like a plan. Let's go.
So if you're listening, make sure you go back to part 1. I don't know, it was weeks ago, but just look for Manav Gupta. By the way, you also have your podcast. What's your podcast name? It's AI, as I recall.
Well, ship and not AI. Yeah.
I'll have to beep that out. I'm messing with you.
Yeah.
All right. It's really good. I've been listening to it. You're so serious on that podcast, though, man. Why don't you lighten up just a little bit?
I think that's the nature of the beast, right? Comes with the territory as well. Like, I not to plug my podcast, but I end up spending so much time, and I'm finding, as I'm sure everybody else is, with the rate and pace of innovation, it's getting impossible to keep up. So by the time I get to recording a video, I'm already so beaten up.
Well, look, seriously, everybody, you should check out that podcast as well. You want to learn about the ins and outs. Maybe I have a little too much fun on my podcast, but he really goes through it. He goes through a lot of the charts and different things like that you probably want to see. What got you into it? I don't think we got into it last time in terms of why did you start this? I mean, I know everybody knows why I did mine, just selfishly to learn whatnot, network, social. Why did you do yours?
I think there were a couple of motivations. One, obviously to learn. And then, of course, with learning comes sharing and give back. Second, I also think that we are not talking about it enough. So when the builders of AI and the builders of frontier models such as Dario Amodei, when they are talking about that, this thing is going to have such profound implications, but we don't have enough of a discourse going on. So I'm trying to create that noise in my small way that I can. That if you have the CEO of OpenAI say that we are confident we know how to build AGI as we have understood it, yet we don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about enough about the implications to society. I'm trying to create some noise about it.
Let me restate that a little bit, though. When you say we don't talk about it enough, because I think most people listening are like, we talk about it nonstop, 24/7. But what you're talking about is the stuff behind the scenes, in the shadows. How's it going to affect society? What do we need to be prepared for personally? Jobs, economies, things like that. Is that what you were discussing?
100%. So, I mean, listen, once again, to quote Dario Amodei, CEO of Anthropic, AI is starting to get better than humans at almost all intellectual tasks, which means we now have a duty to be honest about what is coming. I don't think that that's on people's radars. Just one example. Jensen Huang is on note to say, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone who uses AI. But then he goes on to say, every job will be affected. And immediate. It is unquestionable. You have the Stanford HAI founder, Fei Li. He's talking about, at its best, AI will boost global economic productivity, but it has the potential, he goes on to say, to displace entire industries, increase economic disparity. Therefore, harnessing the positive requires purposeful, human-centered decisions. So when I say that we're not talking about it enough, I think AI enthusiasts and early adopters are talking about it. But this has to be in the public discourse of, well, what happens when this thing truly hits, it truly scales? If it continues to displace and disrupt all of the white-collar jobs and a number of the blue-collar jobs through automation, what happens to future of humanity?
I get you.
That's what I mean by having this.
Those are deep thoughts, man. Deep thoughts by Manav Gupta. I got you. Look, I think about these things as well, but I know you do a ton more research than I do. So let's start right into the big picture. First of all, just on a lighter question, where do you think the real AI battlegrounds are right now?
Okay, so I'm going to answer it in slightly different manner. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this question and take this as an opportunity to really set the stage around what is AGI versus ASI.
And that was my next question. So we can do that.
Right.
So it's all good.
Okay. So I'm going to define basically 3 levels of AI at a macro level. Let's call it narrow AI, which is today. You have task-specific system that is optimized for one domain. Computers or AI or machines that play chess, image recognition, recommendation algorithms. They are excellent at one thing. They can beat humans at one thing. AlphaGo, AlphaFold, that protein folding. They're better than PhD level humans, right? That's already sailed. You then have AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which means systems that can match human cognitive ability across any domain, which means learning, reasoning, adapting without any task-specific training. They don't need to be conscious to be transformative, is the key. This is emerging. So number of the foundation models and the state-of-the-art models that we use on a daily basis, they are beginning to be at that level. They're not quite there yet, and that's AGI. Then let's talk about the hypothetical, which is ASI, or artificial superintelligence, which means that now this thing surpasses human cognition in all domains for all humans. So it's PhD level capability, which means it's also self-improving. It's going to be potentially beyond human comprehension, right? That's the scenario that we're designing towards, by the way, intentionally or not. I think those 3 levels are extremely important to understand. So there is narrow, there is AGI as we define it, which many argue is a narrow definition of AGI itself. Then there is ASI, artificial superintelligence, which is hypothetical.
Well, let's stick with AGI for a second. How do you define AGI? I mean, there's so many people defining it. You know, I think every expert in the field has said, I think the latest that will hit this is like 2050, the latest, what I'm hearing. But we'll get into the time clock here for a second. But what is the elements of AGI? How do you define it? Or how do you think it should be defined?
The DeepMind lab from Google did a really good job of defining what I'm going to describe levels of AGI, right? So they published this piece of work in 2023. They came up with 5 levels of AGI. And like all researchers, so level 0, there is no AI. That's easy, okay? Level 1, which is emerging AGI. That's where we are. So the examples are GPT-4o, Claude 3.7, Gemini, some of the current frontier models. Their performance, broadly speaking, is that of an unskilled human, right? An average human. That's where we are today. Level 2 is competent AGI, which means that you are now going to have an AI system that's going to be better than 50% or 50th percentile, better than skilled labels, people that are skilled in that particular theme. We're not quite there yet. So we are at level 1, emerging AGI. And then as you start going on this ladder, so I talked about level 2. Level 3 is expert AGI, in which case you have a machine that is 90th percentile better than skilled humans. So I talked about AlphaFold, the protein folding models as an example. So these are narrow examples of generality, but high levels of capability. And that's level 3. Level 4 is virtuoso AGI, which basically means this model is going to be 99th percentile skilled adults, right? So narrow superhuman tasks. And then level 5 gets you to ASI, which exceeds the performance of all humans. That's one good ladder way of thinking about.
Where would you say we are right now?
We are at level 1, emerging AGI.
Emerging AGI. But when I think of AGI, I think in terms of 3 Qs. It's like IQ, thinking, processing, CQ, which is more logic, it's creativity, and EQ, which is emotional awareness. Is that kind of how you think of it in those 3 terms? And I think, where are we at? And this is just me when I do my own rationalization.
Yeah. I think, listen, one can argue that AI has no EQ, but it can pretend to have EQ. So when I had this
debate with somebody, though, I can't remember, somebody on my podcast, it was one of the professors, I think, of Princeton, and his argument is it does have EQ today because it lends you to believe. But I said, hey, if you're lending to believe, it doesn't really have it. It's just creating a mirage that it has it. That's very different. But he was like, hey, what's the difference? If you're emotionally connected to somebody because you think they have EQ, it's all the same. And I don't think he said it that way. But then it got me thinking. I mean, because there is a lot of people that, as you hear and you see in the news and everything else, that you got people developing relationships with bots.
That's right.
They're ridiculous. But that's EQ in his mind. Hey, that's EQ. So
Listen,
does it have it or does it not have it?
There is a famous adage that perception is reality, right? So I think purists will always debate whether or not the AI models today have any intelligence or not. You'll have many of the self-proclaimed AI realists will say, at best, it's a token prediction engine. But if that token prediction engine is such that it evokes wonder and empathy, it is as good as having it. But all that to say, I'm going to go back to the 7 levels of AGI. I think what we have right now is is an emerging AGI. Is it better than many humans in writing code? Absolutely. The code may not work the first time around, but the code doesn't work the first time around that humans write as well either, right? So in that context, I think we are beginning to be somewhere between level 1 and level 2.
When we get to ASI, are we talking a humanoid or something?
So humanoid or other forms where AI gets a body, which is a physical embodiment of AI, it may or may not be a physical embodiment, right? So let's do a thought experiment. I call it the 10-minute problem. So imagine there are 2 companies that are chasing AI or AGI, right? And let's say company A gets there 10 minutes before company B. This, by the way, is a very real scenario that we saw during the Cold War, right? Now, unlike nuclear weapons, what these systems can do is they can do recursive self-improvement. And the hypothesis that I'm putting forward is that this 10-minute conjecture or this 10-minute problem that I'm talking about, that 10-minute difference creates a permanent, insurmountable advantage. And here's what I mean by that. So let's say company A achieves AGI, which means that they find this machine, they build this machine that's equivalent to brilliant humans across all cognitive domains. Well, guess what? A minute later, this thing analyzes its own architecture and say it finds 47 different optimizations that humans missed. By the way, we're already seeing evidence of this. So when Andrej Karpathy released his auto research, which is this agent that runs in an auto research loop, it actually identified improvements in his own KV cache. Maybe in another 2 to 3 minutes, this thing does the first recursive upgrade. So humans created this AGI. It figures out in a minute later how it can improve itself. In the next 2 to 3 minutes, it does its first recursive training loop, and maybe it becomes 10x more efficient. Maybe another 3 to 4 minutes later, it becomes 100 times more capable. It's now operating at a level that no human can even comprehend or predict what's going on. 10 minutes later, company 2 achieves AGI, but it is too late. Company 1 is now so far ahead that company 2 can never catch up. Okay? I think that's a very real scenario that we should think about.
You think that's the race we're in?
I think that's where the world is going. Because absolutely where the race is in is whoever builds the most competent, comprehensive model that they can control, that gives them a multiplier, an R&D multiplier. So, very famously, the AI 2027 website, they talk about this R&D multiplier, right? McKinsey talks about an R&D multiplier as well. And again, the hypothesis there is that as this AI comes in whatever forms of AGI levels that we talk about, the embodiment of these things might be a physical embodiment like the humanoids or other types of robots, drones, etc. that we're talking about. Or it can get hands in the form of AI agents, which is the whole, the flavor du jour. So you could have a situation, I think we're already finding a situation, and the internet is rife now with the rate and pace of releases from Anthropic. So one can argue that right now in early 2026, we are already at a stage where the most capable models are giving us a 1.5x multiplier, which means a problem that used to take 12 months, we are able to do it in 8, and then do the math backwards.
So let me restate that back to you. Basically, you say the first one that gets AGI, whatever that definition is, the value is a compounding effect by which it goes 100%. So fast thereafter that the second person to finish doesn't even count.
Exactly. First one past the pit is going to get all the riches. I think that's the real fight. So when you see Colossus AI, when you see Anthropic, OpenAI, that's where the race is.
And hence what we're seeing as countries, companies go as fast as they can, mostly without much regulation or the control you mentioned, with very little motivation to put that regulation in there, because that'll just slow down, and whoever gets it first is the winner.
That's right. Yeah. And listen, I'm not the only one that's talking about this. There is also this concept of a probability of doom, or a probability of doom estimate, or a scale, or a p-doom. So I did some search to see, okay, who are some of the biggest, brightest minds around the globe talking about everybody from Jan LeCun to Sam Altman to Joshua Bengio, Jeffrey Hinton, and so on and so forth. So when you have the grandfathers of AI, Joshua and Jeffrey, putting in the probability of catastrophic harm somewhere between 20 and 50%.
I just want to go fishing. That's all I want to do.
I know, exactly. Right? So again, when I keep talking about that, we don't talk about it enough. I think what ends up happening is we all look at these new models that come out, the new features that they come out. We get so enamored with it. We then go try to deploy these to our clients. We end up having these discussions about which model and then ROI. I don't get the value and so on and so forth. Yet we see these insane amounts of money that are being poured. Well, the people that are deploying this money, they know what they're doing. Right? The sums we are talking about is almost incomprehensible. But that's why. What they're really after is not just the current market. I mean, yes, there is some economics here. But the prize, don't be confused. The prize here is whoever comes to this AGI level 2 even, forget any other levels higher, is going to have unsurmountable advantage.
You're not painting a pretty picture, man. So let's back up. So what time frame are we on? What's the AGI clock? Where are we at? What breakthroughs do you think will need to happen to get us to true AGI? And where do you think, and what does your research said about the next 3 to 5 years?
So again, not to plug my podcast.
You can plug it. That's all right. You're about to.
So I actually created this animation, this graphic of what I'm calling the AGI clock. Again, inspired by the doomsday clock that was created during the Cold War. I think we are at 7 minutes to midnight. Midnight being when AGI arrives. So 2012, when AlexNet happened and deep learning truly arrived, we finally had a neural network at scale. AlexNet won the ImageNet challenge by 10% margin. The capability or the focus of the neural network shifted from academic curiosity to an existential force. Then 2017, obviously, we saw the rise of the emergence of the transformer architecture. 2020, we had GPT 3.5. 2022, GPT-3 rather was 2020. 2022 was GPT 3.5, which achieved 100 million users. All the way to now, we are very close. There is recursive research already happening. I mean, again, Anthropic and OpenAI, some of the Chinese companies, they're already on record that the AI agents that they already have, they're already getting somewhere around a 1.5x multiplier in R&D with AI. So we're already there. It is not.
Why are you still working then, man? Why don't we just all go into the backwoods and go fishing?
Yes, I think that's the innovator's dilemma that all humans are, right? We all got to keep the lights on. We all got to pay our mortgages. We all have our kids. The best we can do is be prepared for what's coming.
So how do you do that?
I think the only way we do that is to improve our own AI fluency, right? We got to learn to understand the boundaries of what these tools are. I'll give you a very practical example, and I stayed at this for so long. It made me so hopping mad. So somebody sent me an email, and it was an important subject, but not something that my calendar was not affording me time to truly give it justice. So I threw it at one of the models. I got an answer. I tweaked it a little bit. I sent it out. 48 hours later, I got a response back from this individual who happens to be, by the way, a professor at one of the world's renowned universities. And I was waiting for that email. His email comes back, and I can tell it's written by AI. The point from this is we got to build that fluency ourselves. We got to understand the boundaries of these tools. We got to understand how our jobs are impacted. The early research right now from Goldman and McKinsey is stating that something like 66% of white-collar jobs in the knowledge industry are being impacted by this. But there is a second part of that study that says of the AI-impacted jobs, half of those jobs, 56% of those jobs, are actually seeing an increase in compensation. Because, of course, companies are trying to figure out how they implement it. So the best case scenario, whether this happens 2-3 years out or longer, is those that are in the industry or in any knowledge work. For us, it's important to understand how to use this tech to our advantage versus be the one that gets left out.
What does 7 minutes to midnight really mean? Does that mean this year? Does that mean next year?
I think 7 minutes to midnight means that how close we are. To me, it means readiness, the likelihood of will this happen or not.
So basically, just the interpretation here is you're saying, look, it's going to happen. The probability,
it's going to happen.
We're very, very close. That's your point. You're not giving it a timeline. You're just saying,
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And by the way, I'm not giving a timeline not because I'm hesitant to, but I think there is no consensus across the industry. Depending upon who you
across the industry, like I've said, is what I've read is any between now and 2050.
Yeah.
Worst case.
I think,
naysayers, but I will say the naysayers are saying 2050, so they're not saying no. They're just saying, hey, you guys are getting ahead of your game here. There's a lot of things, and I think there's a lot of inhibitors yet. Mostly, I think emotional intelligence, EQ, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But what do you think? What do you see?
So I think there is definitely some walls that have to be crossed. There is the data wall that almost all of the data that's available on Common Crawl, that's consumed. Almost all the 95% of books and literature is already consumed. 40% of social media data is consumed, and so on and so forth. So that's one element. I think there is some element around of challenge around architectural or algorithmic. We're already beginning to see algorithmic improvements happen. So we saw the race towards acquiring RAM because everybody needs RAM because all of these models require high bandwidth memory. I think that's the second wall. There are some other walls in terms of compute. So the projection by some of the other companies are like AI 2027 that I was referring, that to get to DeepMind level, AGI level 2, they are projecting humanity requires $200 billion in compute costs alone. I think we are already seeing the likelihood of that happening with all the money that's been raised, all the VC money that's been raised. Tied to that is wall number 4, which is the energy wall. So 6 gigawatt of power required for Open Brain alone, as an example. I think that might be a spanner with everything that's happening geopolitically, just the availability of power. That's why you see the likes of Microsoft getting in discussions with opening up the nuclear reactors at 3 Mile Island and so on and so forth. And then the last wall, I think, is going to be the alignment wall. So, and by alignment, what I mean by that is a company can write a specification to train or align the model once the model is trained on what it should or should not do. But these things are already so arcane, not archaic, so arcane, so esoteric, that humans cannot even check whether or not they work. We can do all the alignment we want, but we don't know if it's working or not. I mean, most famously, Anthropic came out with this constitution for AI, but they cannot put any guardrails into this and guarantee that everything that they said in that constitution actually is what is being followed. They have to continuously put guardrails on top of these models to make sure that the models are not bleeding into things that they don't want the model to do.
I'm not convinced that anybody wants guardrails right now, based on what we said earlier, just in terms of the race. I mean, you put guardrails and somebody else beats you, and then it's all for naught. I think that's what a lot of politicians, by example, are thinking.
Yeah, there is the school of thought that the models that the model providers make available to us, the consumers, versus the models that they may have access to in their labs, might be entirely different beasts. I think that's most likely true. Like any other company, go ahead.
What would lend itself to that is the Anthropic versus U.S. government scenario as of late. The government.
Yeah, I mean, although that was driven by different motivations and reasons there, and I think Anthropic came out, in my opinion, looking a lot more positive because they chose to decline it. Then, of course, OpenAI jumped in because they wanted to be deeply embedded, although then Altman ended up having to change his stance within 24 hours because of the backlash. But that's by the by.
OpenAI, didn't they just say whatever you want?
No, I mean, originally they said yes. Then Altman had to backtrack that they will put the guardrails. But I think that is more for, those are the type of things that get sound bites. But I think the real thing for us to focus on is, like any other product developer, software vendor, technology vendor, their labs are going to be working on version N+1, while the rest of the world, while the consumers are consuming version N. So who's to say how powerful that N+1 is?
I just want to go fishing. All right, let's talk about risk regulation since we're already there. What are the biggest safety risks people aren't talking about enough?
Oh boy. Listen, the reality is that governance always follows innovation, right? So if you look at the race between AI capability and AI governance, to truly control this, we require, in my estimation, a global treaty.
I think that's ever going to happen. Look at the world right now, dude.
That it's not going to happen. So the UN advisory body they did establish, by the way, for what it's worth, they did establish a AI advisory body. That happened in 2025, last year. But there is no global treaty. Without that global treaty, it's wild, wild west, which is where we are right now. Right now, I think it's 12 days to go for the EU AI Act to come in place. I think that thing has some teeth that's going to bite. But does it cause a slowdown? That we gotta see.
I hear some kids in the background, man. See, you gotta take care of your kids, man.
Well, I'm doing this for my kids because if I'm educated, I can go educate my kids.
Yeah, but so isn't the the EU policy? That's just going to slow down the EU compared to everybody else. It may be the right thing. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that it's going to slow down, all things considered. If they put in regulations and nobody else does, they're putting in guardrails. Hence, the notion of guardrails means you're going to go a little bit slower, no matter how much that little bit is defined. So others have a leg up.
So yes, but I think there may also be a case of if those guardrails are systemic guardrails that are put into the model alignment phase and other factors, more so with this technology than any other that I have come across in my career. I think guardrails in this situation actually help you scale the adoption because you can feel safer. And perception is the reality, right, and goes a long way. So if I can buy into an ecosystem where I feel a lot more comfortable, it's going to open up more avenues for innovation. That's how I like to think about it. I'll give you a practical example. So as most of the clients in the financial industry, at least, they're all building their control planes. And then I was talking to a few of them. There is a couple of companies that have actually helped implement their control plane that they've gone into production with that. And what's interesting is those that have a control plane already in running and active, they have far more agents, almost an order of magnitude more agents running in production than the ones where they don't have any controls. Because perversely in this scenario, it's the controls that is giving them the visibility, which is giving them the assurance that they can go at scale and not do something silly.
I get your point. Just to restate that back, basically you're saying with a control plane, you're set up for success and you can feel more comfortable about releasing and getting the right answers from whatever agents you're putting into place. But I'm still not sure that counters the rogue agent that has no regulation that is doing the compounding effect that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, but so the rogue agent that I mentioned, remember that was the level 4 and 5 of the on the AGI ladder. So number one, we're not there yet. Number two, right now the problem is not so much as a rogue agent as of a rogue human, right? Malicious actors or nation states weaponizing existing capabilities for malicious purposes, right? So we already saw, 48 hours ago, what happened with Light LLM as an example. That's not an AI. That's humans using AI, injecting a PIP vulnerability deep into Light LLM so that they can pilfer credentials and upload them to a remote server.
We got to pause. Say something very positive about AI right now, so that we don't lose the listeners are going to be like, I've got to turn on sports radio or something.
Listen, I'll give you my most positive take on this. If I want you all to imagine a 2x2 matrix of careers that are high risk, low risk, moderate risk, and resilient. Just a 2x2 mental matrix. So top left is high risk jobs. So anything to do with data entry, data processing, basic customer service, paralegal, market research analysts, basic accounting, bookkeeping, they're going to be wiped out. All right. Then let's talk about moderate risk, which is the top right, which is software engineering, early programmers, code machines, routine financial analytics, content writing, copy editing, graphics design, gone. They're going to be at moderate risk. We're already seeing uplift happening. These jobs are not necessarily that are going to disappear, but they're going to require humans to use these tools because these tools can do such a good job. Here is the next two more interesting things. Product management and strategy, they become actually even more important because, two fools with a tool, whoever is lesser of a fool is going to be a better user. Sales leadership and enterprise and strategy skills are still going to be important. Strategic consulting, investigative journalism, clinical psychology and therapy, these are at very low risk. But here's the kicker. If you look at the jobs that are going to be resilient, this is one poor engineer's opinion. I think the skilled trades, electricians, plumbers, blue-collar jobs. But the other interesting thing, at least for the next decade or so, AI trainers, ethicists, governance, developers that are building AI agents, therapists and counselors, those jobs don't disappear. So unlike other
You got
revolutions,
physical AI. What can physical AI take that? Like a physical AI could be.
so physical, yes. And listen, I've spoken and at length, and I've written at length, and I've covered physical AI in my podcast as well. The biggest challenge with physical AI is lack of data. So let's take a step back. When you think about physical AI, this is basically where there is an embodiment of a model onto some kind of a physical entity, humanoid, robots, dogs, whatever. In this scenario, where the world is going is that they're building what they're calling VLA models: vision, language, and action. So let's think of a simple scenario. If I want to pick up this pen from the table, in less than 200 milliseconds, I figured out, okay, in order to pick this pen, I have to actuate my arm. I have to then move my fingers, apply some force to hold this pen between the fingers and pick it up. The VLA models, the vision model is doing the visual recognition part of it. The language model is taking this input from the user or whoever the user is to actually understand what to do. And action is the actuator motion that's going to happen so that it actuates the rotors and the motors in the hand so the humanoid or the whatever robot can go pick this up. The problem there is that this action has to be taken in 3 dimensions and the right pressures have to be applied. There is not enough labeled data in the world. That is the biggest problem with physical AI right now, which is why you see some emerging patterns around use of synthetic data, use of gaming data as an example to try and simulate that. Hence the argument, here is my conspiracy theorist emerging, that when you look at something like Tesla, the valuation that they have and the multiples that they have are so stupid because the 11 million Teslas that are on the street, they're actually collecting vision data. They're collecting real world data. It's a data collection engine.
So you're saying that they're not really there for driving cars. Elon is trying to collect data, visual data.
He has been on record, his company Colossus AI, they absolutely need that data. You need the real world data. And I mean, I'm not trying to stretch the truth here and say something provocative for the sake of getting eyeballs, but I think but we have to very realistically think about the lack of availability of labeled data and high quality data to build these physical embodiments of AI. Are they coming? They absolutely are coming. I mean, look at what Unitree in China has done. Unitree G1 robot you can buy for $16,000. The Tesla Optimus entry pricing is $120,000. Like no comparison, right? And then look at the other thing that China is doing. So for the last 2 years now, they've been running robot Olympics. So the Chinese government figured out that, hey, if these humanoid type of things, if they were to bring those into mass production and on the street, humans are going to freak out. So how do you dispel the myth? How do you build credibility? Let people see this in action. So they've had these humanoid / robotics Olympics where people can see these things play soccer, box, race each other. So then when they do surveys after this, you see the confidence in humans adopting those things in real world is in high 70s compared to in the Western world in low 30.
That goes back to my Otis elevator example I gave, I think, last podcast or maybe 2 podcasts ago.
Yeah.
Because my argument is that, like any innovation, it's often humans get in the way, right? And I gave an example perfectly aligning what we're talking about here. People bitch about Waymo more than anything else, but look, there's more humans make more traffic issues, than any of the Waymos are doing. But because it's an AI, it's like, it took a wrong lane. That's no good. We got to shut these things down. It was like the Otis elevator, like I said, and sorry if I'm repeating, you guys are listening. When the Otis elevator, I'm going off memory here again, but it came out like in 1852. Nobody wanted to ride it. They'd rather get on the old ones that had the pulley system with no redundancy and, with a non-optimal outcome. It goes down, you go down. But he said that's not the way it should be. And so he creates this elevator that has redundancy, but nobody wants to get on it because it seems strange. It's not normal. So what he had to do very quickly is he did 3 things: put a mirror in it so everybody look at themselves, kind of distract them. He put music in it to be pleasant. And then he put an elevator attendant. So when people looked at it, they were like, well, that guy's in there. I guess he is going up and down all day long. I guess it's pretty safe. So then they started doing it. It's kind of like what you're talking about here. It's smart, right? You got to do the Olympics so that everybody gets to see these in action, kind of become accustomed to them. They're not of any harm. I don't know. Although that can backfire. Maybe you look at him and it gets creepy. It's like, oh my goodness, what's coming here? I don't know.
Listen, it is, so the cat's out of the bag, right? It's inevitable that we will see autonomous vehicles happening, drones, delivery robots serving us in restaurants. We all have to get used to the fact that these things are coming. So between Waymo, Tesla, Aurora, Zoox, and Cruise, that's 5 companies in the West in this space of autonomous robots alone, each with market with the valuation of over $1 billion. I think at this point over $10 billion. I think Zoox might be the lowest at this point. And they all have various capabilities, right? Waymo, is, to your point, is into paid rides. Tesla, we all know. Aurora is now into trucking and commercial. If I remember correctly, they have hundreds of trucks. They've already done over 100,000 miles, driverless miles with 0 incidents. You have, there's a cautionary tale around here, exactly to your point, that General Motors tried it with their Cruise self-driving cars, the robot taxis that they had. There will be failures, right? Innovation is not going to be steady. But look at what China is doing, right? I always come back to, if something has legs, it's going to have green shoots of innovation happening everywhere. So off top of our memory, in China, there is Baidu, which has Apollo. I think they did 17 million plus rides compared to 4,500, almost 500,000 rides per year that Waymo is doing. 17 million, 500,000. Do the math. There is V-Ride, which is doing something slightly similar. You have Didi, which has an AI division focused predominantly on autonomous cars. They've done some 80 million plus miles of kilometers of testing. Look at the scale. These things are coming, my friend.
So we talked about jobs. What about traditional companies? What do you think the impact there is? Consulting firms, just retail? I mean, where do you think we're going with the companies?
I think certainly with consulting, they are going to be under, all consulting firms are going to be under significant threat, as also evidenced by the decline in their valuations. So and then of course what the Big Four are trying to do or have done is, all the Big Four, they all have signed partnerships and deals with OpenAI, etc., because they want to make sure that they're at the forefront of implementing it. But any business that scales on the back of having humans and human bodies to deliver some capability is going to be impacted. Because the multiple here is that the cost per unit of work is going down, and whether it is to process data, whether it is to organize data, present the data, build beautiful charts, all the tools that are available in agentic AI, they will take care of it. So I think all of those things are going to be impacted for sure.
On a positive note, I would say it's one of the best times to be an entrepreneur in terms of starting a company. Yes. I've got a buddy, by example. I mean, it's a perfect example. We were talking about this, so I'm not using myself. I'm going to use him, but he's created a co-founder bot, right? Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
What he's done is taken, you know how you take those behavior tests of who you are, whatever. So he loads that in, so it knows who he is, how he acts, how he behaves. So he's got now this co-founder that he can work with and test ideas off of as they come in. Now, it could be too biased towards him versus a complete, diverse, independent thought, but whatever. Mm-hmm. That's how he's done it. I mean, he loves it because he goes back, and I was playing around with some stuff too, and he's like, you got to be harsher. I said, I'm not going to be harsher because when these things come alive, they're going to come after my rear end. I'm going to be very gentle. What are you talking? He goes, no, you got to tell me. He says, tell it that you didn't QA, the response. So QA your response before you give it back to me, and then only then give me an answer. We were going back.
Well, listen, let me leave you with these 3 possible human futures. So there is the utopian view, the scenario of abundance. So AGI, however narrow each company defines it, because everybody's chasing it and everybody keeps changing its definition. But stick to the 5-level definition from Google DeepMind. So AGI comes in, scenario 1, on one extreme abundance scenario. It solves climate problem, disease, poverty. We have universal abundance, which replaces scarcity that we have around the globe, allowing humans to redirect energy to creativity, to relationships, to meaning. I think there's less than 25% chance of that happening.
Well, you get me so excited, and then you pull down the percentage.
Then you have the other extreme event, which is a race ending event, right? We have a misaligned or a weaponized AGI, which causes catastrophic harm. And in my mind, it's not robots. It's not the Skynet scenario. It's most likely bioweapons, economic collapse, some kind of a irreversible power concentration, right? So for example, this thing comes out, it does recursive self-improvement, but somehow it escapes, quote unquote, and I'm being deliberately vague and loose, it loses or escapes human control. Or that there is no, or that humans develop it, but we don't do sufficient alignment verification and we deploy, the specification becomes unverifiable. This thing causes a race-ending catastrophic event. The odds of that happening, in my opinion, are less than 5%. I think less than 5% of that, in my personal estimate, because I think, yeah, exactly, that's positive. Here is the problem. I think the bulk of the scenario is the stuff in the middle, which is, to me, is the concentration scenario or the economic inequality scenario. In this scenario, the productivity gains are seized upon or captured by the few. The middle class hollows out further, and the democratic institutions are further weakened by AI-enabled surveillance. In other words, the top 1% capture 80% of productivity gains through AI. 3 to 5 companies control all critical AI infrastructure. Does it sound like...
That's not positive either, man. I don't see that as positive. You were going down a positive route, and then you just completely took a left turn.
The rug pull. I mean, listen, that's the 3 scenarios I see. Right? Flourishing, less than 25. Catastrophic, in my opinion, less than 5. Great economic inequality. That's what I see in the middle.
So last question. What are you advising your kids to study in school then? I mean, as they go to college, what advice are you going to give them? They're going to go computer science. They're going to go, what are they going to do?
I think the critical skills are still the same. So World Economic Forum published this paper that I really like of jobs or skills that are going to be relevant 2030 and beyond. And I look at that with my kids, I'm going to say pretty much on a weekly basis. And what stands out for me is all of the skills that humanity values today are still going to be relevant in the future. So communication, problem decomposition, critical thinking, right? Analytical thinking. Those are still going to be relevant. Again, what I keep coming back to is, as good as this thing is going to be, and it will continue to get better, and let's imagine a scenario that with all the geopolitical turmoil that's going on, we never achieve AGI level 3. Say we are stuck at AGI level 2. Say we hit a wall of the 5 walls that I talked about that we just are unable to overcome. And we are at level 2 for, to your point, till 2030. Those skills are still going to be important. So what I try to do with my kids is I try to arm them, and I continue to arm them with how to use this thing, how to build with this thing, how to spot the use of these things, how to fine-tune these things, how to implement these things safely in whatever they're trying to do, and try not to cheat when they do their homework with AI. Because that catches them every single time.
Don't have them listen to the podcast. They'll be like, what? That is off the rails. No, it's all good. Yeah. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. So AI, that's where they go?
That's exactly where they go, except the P and not the T. That's AI.
It's good, guys. Yeah. You should listen to it. I listen to it. So look, I don't have much time. So I only go where I get the best podcasts. I like that one. I like Acquired. Several other podcasts. I don't know if you Acquired. Do you listen to Acquired? That's really good.
I do. Yes. Yeah. That's amazing. Yes. Yeah. Awesome. I also listen to Lex Friedman. He gets some really interesting people there. I think that's another amazing one.
Yeah. Thank you so much, man. Good talking to you. I'm glad. See, I got to do more podcasts so we can just chat more, and I get to listen to you, dude.
Anytime. Thank you.
Hey, podcast listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the podcast again. Always hit us on almartintalksdata@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. Otherwise, later. Bye-bye.